you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey folks, it's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the latest things that makes official. Welcome to 16 years of the Chris Voss Show with over 2,400 episodes. CEOs, billionaires, White House President's Advisor, Pulitzer Prize winners, governors, congressmen, you name it. All the most brightest people, the authors who bring all their great stories of life, their learnings, their lessons, all the things they overcame and how they overcame it to let you know that you're not alone in the world and give you their stories, the fabric of life. As always, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may buy advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, an amazing man on the show. We're going to be talking to him about his insights and some of the wonderful things he's doing in the world. Andy joins us on the show. He's an innovative entrepreneur and former executive who has redefined the healthcare landscape with a BS in commerce from the University of Virginia and extensive experience at Host Marriott Corporation, where he managed over $1.5 billion in transactions. He has a deep understanding for business dynamics. His entrepreneurial spirit ignited at Stanford Business School, leading to the co-founding of Blue Canyon Capital, where he achieved significant growth and investment success with a 10 times return on acquisition. And now Andy is dedicated to making healthcare accessible for everyone as the founder of CrowdHealth. CrowdHealth helps individuals navigate the complexities of medical expenses, save thousands on healthcare costs, and get access to better care. His approach is about empowering the people, making him a sought-after voice in the intersection of business and healthcare innovation. Welcome to the show, Andy. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find out more about you on the interwebs?
Join CrowdHealth.com and join CrowdHealth on all of our socials.
So give us a 30,000 overview, what you do there.
Yeah, we're trying to ditch health insurance. We're trying to give people a real alternative to health insurance. Nobody likes health insurance. There's a poll that came out, I think 3 years ago, that was the most hated industries in the world. And number one was government and number two was health insurance. And so I don't think anybody really likes their health insurance. So we're trying to give people a real alternative to having health insurance. And it kind of stems back from the last time I had health insurance. I sold my previous company and I didn't have health insurance anymore. So I had to go into the healthcare marketplace and get one of those Obamacare plans. Mm-hmm. And it was $1,100 or $1,200 for me, my wife, my two girls. And I kind of joke it worked until I had to use it. My little one was having recurring ear infections. And so we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, who told us that she had a hole in her eardrum. Wow. So we had to go get that fixed. It was a 15-minute procedure. I got the bill and it was $8,000 for 15 minutes. I was like, holy crap, $8,000 for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And little did I know that the insurance plan was going to come back a few weeks after that and say, you know what, this is not medically necessary. So we're not going to pay for that procedure. So I had to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital and I was pissed and I quit health insurance and I've never gone back. I've built a company to allow people to live viably uninsured, which is countercultural, but it's working really, really well.
So how do you make that possible? How have you changed the model of what the current insurance model is for health insurance?
Yeah, I'm sure you see on X or Instagram or whatever, all these crazy stories about people getting just huge bills from their, hospital or doctor or whatever it may be. And in fact, those huge bills are because insurance is in the way. Insurance is paying for it. Everything else in life you and I buy, we know what the price is. We go and buy a car. We know exactly what it is. We know exactly how much we're going to pay. And healthcare is the exact opposite, which is we go and get our care and then don't worry about the price later until we get something in the mail and you hope the health insurance plan is going to pay for it. What we've done is taken health insurance out between you and your doctor. So you pay your doctor directly So you know what the cost of care is. And as a result of that, you're pulling out all the administrative, all the bureaucracy, all the middlemen in that process. And as a result, the doctor is able to give you 40 or 50% better prices than if you were to pay for it through healthcare. Our members are getting 50% better pricing than United Healthcare, the seventh largest company on the planet, which is, doesn't seem to make intuitive sense. But if you think about all the administration that these health insurance plans make the doctors go through, you can then understand why doctors are giving a steep discount to people who will pay them directly.
I've dated people that have worked in the billing departments for doctors, and the nightmarish, like their whole job is just to try and get the insurance companies to pay services, and they have a backlog that is just insane. And they're constantly, there's a lot of doctors we have on the show that quit the business, and because of what a nightmare it was to deal with the insurance company. Was a nightmare. Absolutely. Paid and we wonder why these doctors are just trying to churn as many patients through as they can. They're kind of like attorneys have the same problem. They have a balance sheet where they're usually owed, way more money than they'll ever receive. If you got a guy you represent in jail and he's not ever getting out, you're getting a good day. But I can see the benefit of that, because you hand them cash or whatever. So is it a pooling sort of business model where it's pooling the funds of the payments that are going to the people inside, or do they pay a monthly fee? How does that work for people?
It's a great question.
With it?
Yeah, we have 10,000 people in the community, over 10,000, who are funding each other's bills. And so what happens is, to be a part of the community, you pay us $55 a month. Wow. And then once a month, we will ask you for an additional $140 to give to somebody else directly in the community if they have a big problem. So you'll get an email, it'll say, hey, Chris broke his arm and it's $5,000. Chris is going to pay the first $500 of that. Then we're going to ask 45 people to give Chris $100. And if they say yes, then $100 goes from their bank account to your bank account. At the end of the day, you're going to have $4,500 from the community, $500 that you pitch in to help. We ask everybody to pitch in the first $500. So you have $5,000 where you can now go and pay the doctor directly. Oh, wow. And we've done this now for 20,000 bills over the last 4 years. And 99.9% of them have gotten fully funded that way. Wow. Everything from little pediatric visits to, we've had 2 or 3 dozen cancer cases now. We've had, crazy stories. We had a guy in Montana who was fishing in bear country. So he had a 44 in his holster. He caught a fish. He leaned down. The gun fell out of his holster. It hit the rock. It went off. It went into his calf, out the back of his calf, into his thigh, out the top of his thigh, into his chest, and out the back. He got medevaced. A helicopter had to pick him up out of the middle of a stream, medevaced to a local hospital, which was 2 hours away, went into a coma, had sepsis, thought he was going to die. And that's a nearly $1 million bill. And that was negotiated by us. So we'll actually negotiate those bills for you. We sent those to the community. At the end of the day, that ended up being somewhere between a $200,000 and $250,000 bill after we negotiated it. And the community fully funded that. And, he's on his way to recovery. Wow. That's one of the bigger examples of things that the community has funded. So it works really, really well. Chris, the other real thing I would say is cool is, your money is going directly to another person. My money is going directly to Michael, who shot himself, as opposed to going to, big megacorp United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so I know where my money is going every month, which feels great. I don't love sending money to, United or Cigna or Aetna, but I'm more than happy to send something to, Michael or, any of these people who, have an injury or a pregnancy or whatever it may be. So it's a really cool, different model.
So can the bills go beyond the $140 a month of the additional ask roughly? I mean, can it really soar if things get out of control?
So we have a model. It's actually up to $140. This month, we only asked people for the 85 of the 140. So if you were a member of the community this month and you're an individual, we'd ask you for $85 to $90. And so that allows us then to if we have a bunch of really big bills come in, then that allows us to scale up to that 140. but it will never go above 140. That's the max we ask.
Okay.
And we've only asked that 3 times in the last 4 years.
Really?
And so it does not happen very often, but does allow us to scale up and scale down depending upon the amount of bills in the community. So we just think that's a much better way than, holding a big pile of money, in the back end and in a pooling structure. And so this just works kind of on the finance side much, much better.
We've had, I believe, authors on the show that have written about the insurance, and I think a number of people. One of the things we've been told by them, these are people that are journalists that study the system, is one of the problems they're having now in insurance. And I believe I believe it was from a young lady who she worked as a healthcare rep for, I think, 20, 30 years or something along those lines. And for 10 years, I believe it was 10 years, she was undercover for the Justice Department. She turned evidence. And, this is when all the weird stuff was going on with all the medications and of course some of the drugs weren't what they said they were applied how they were supposed to be applied. And so she said, literally, if I recall rightly, that basically the way lawyers are writing health insurance contracts now was they're writing them to build in any sort of back-end default reason to deny the thing they could. Like the whole contracts now are built for plausible deniability, essentially, where they can just be like, you tripped over the curb, stepped on a crack, broke your mama's back when you were 12, and now we won't insure you. Crap, some sort of weird anomaly of fractions.
One of the crazy things that I realized after my bill got declined is that about 20% of healthcare bills are declined. So you have a 1 in 5 chance of your bill getting declined. And not a lot of people have $8,000 sitting around for, a pretty benign, situation with my daughter. And it did cure her, by the way. So it was medically necessary. Right. And 200,000 families last year went bankrupt due to a medical expense, even though they had health insurance.
Wow.
So the whole point of health insurance is to keep you, or any insurance, is to keep you from going into financial distress. And so clearly that's not working. We've got 10,000 members, and I'm proud to say nobody has gone into bankruptcy as a result of being a member of CrowdHealth and having a medical expense. We're proud of that, and we think that this model could replace our existing model, which I think everybody knows is totally busted.
Yeah. And some of the notes that they sent me in 2013, 17 to 18% of Obamacare claims were denied. Holy crap.
That's right.
It's just astounding to me, the way they can deny these things. I think there's some movies I've seen that talk about our healthcare issues, the documentaries, and, them denying claims on cancer patients and things like this. I mean, there really is no moral, sort of ethical, sort of caring about other human beings. It's just pretty much pretty much money. It's money and investor, Wall Street sort of things. And I think you see some of that blowback with that young man who ended up shooting, unfortunately, the health insurance agency. Not the way to solve your problems in democracy.
The CEO of United Healthcare. People don't understand that how health insurance works. In essence, what happens here is that you pay them a premium. So let's just say it's $1,000 a month. And they can max out what their profit is, which is 15% of that. So $150. Wow. Which means that they have to use 85%, $850 for medical expenses and $150 for profit. So if they get into 86 or 87 or 88% of your premium being used for medical expenses, so then what do they want to do? They want to cut that back to maximize their profit. So they, in essence, they have an incentive to deny bills. And there's a lawsuit going on right now where, most of these big procedures, doctors have to get pre-authorization from the health insurance plans. And so what the lawsuit is basically saying is that these health insurance plans dial up the difficulty of getting these surgeries authorized when they start hitting that 85% threshold so that they can maximize their profit. So that's one problem. The other problem is that, if you've got a maximum of $150 of profit, then how do you increase your profit? How do you get your profit to go from 150 and increase 10% to 165? What has to happen is your premium has to go from $1,000 to $1,100. So they actually have an incentive to see your premium go up. over time. The insurance company does. So you've got the buyer of healthcare, which is these insurance companies. They want the price to go up, and the sellers of healthcare, which are the hospital systems, they want the price to go up. And so if you have the buyer of a service and the seller of the same service both wanting the price to go up, you don't need a PhD in economics to figure out what's going to happen. The price is going to go up. And so we have no counter forces that are pushing these prices down, because it's a B2B transaction between, two businesses that both want the price to rise. So that's the screwiness with our system right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, the prices and stuff. And so much of healthcare, isn't catastrophic. And if you do preventative healthcare, then you have less catastrophes. And we don't do any of that. With your with Crowd Health, what area does this serve? Is it nationwide, every state? Is there only certain states it's applicable to?
Yeah, we're in every state: Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico. I think we even have somebody in Guam. So if you're in the United States, or actually even if you're not in the United States, then you can get a U.S. bank account, because the transfer of monies happens on bank accounts. The bank does that. So all you have to do is just be able to get a U.S. bank account, and you can do this. There's only a couple kind of stipulations. You can't be over 260 pounds. You can't be a smoker. And you can't, and unfortunately, currently we can't do anybody on Medicare. So if you're over 65, just for regulatory reasons, we're trying to figure that out. But those are the only three kind of parameters that we have. And in essence, what we're trying to do is incentivize people to be really healthy and taking care of themselves. And obesity is the number one cause of chronic conditions, and so we're trying to incentivize people to get in shape and thrive while they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Because what you do in your 40s, 50s, and 60s dictates what happens in your 70s, 80s, and 90s, unfortunately. So we're really trying to incentivize people to pay attention to their health. And in fact, we give people up to a 20% discount if they can show us that their visceral fat or their fasting insulin levels are really, really good. So we actually give people discounts if they are of good health. And I think it's not too different than your car insurance. If you have your car and you're a great driver, what do you get? You get better rates than the really bad drivers. I think that should be in healthcare too. Unfortunately, that's illegal with health insurance, but because we're not health insurance, we can do some of those things. So it does create a community of people who really do take care of themselves, and that's the type of community I want to be funding.
Yeah, we should all eat better and live better. I think we all think we're going to stay young forever. What happened years ago with our company? We bought a big policy for our thing, and the insurance company came to us, and it was really morally illegal or unethical. I guess I shouldn't say it's illegal if I don't really know the law on it, but that particulars. But they came to us and they're like, we're going to, okay, here's your price for your health insurance policies, but you have 2 employees out of 100 that they consume a lot of health insurance. And ironically, those 2 were my best employees. They were the people who work late, worked hardest. They were my best employees. Like most of my employees were at 5 o'clock, man. They were in that sprinters motion, the sprinter stance to the door. These folks, I'd have to go by, hey, why don't you go home with your family, man? It's going to be fine. Just come back tomorrow. And they came to me and they said, these 2 people are going to raise your premiums for everybody in the company almost $50. That's what they told me. I don't know. They were hustling. They actually asked me to fire those 2 people because they didn't want them on the policy. They actually asked me that. Yeah. And I was like, I was just aghast. I was like, excuse me? And, ironically, they were my 2 best employees, so I'm not getting rid of them. And I wasn't going to do it anyway. If they'd just been normal employees, I wouldn't care. I'm not going to fire people because they're going to increase the thing. And they're like, you could save the rest of everybody else a lot of money. So what happens if you have somebody in the system like that maybe they just start eating all the requests and funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do have some people in the community currently that eat a lot of the funds. We've got a stage 4 melanoma cancer right now where, the guy is going through a brutal set of treatments to try to beat this disease. And, it's a significant ask from the community every single month, and the community has been able to pay it. And still, we're only, like I said, asking $85 of the $140 this month. So we're not even close to being maxed out on that, even with a really complex situation. We have 10,000 people in the community now. So I don't know, I forget how many people were in your company. And 100. So you get to 100, if you get to a size where, 1, 2, even 30 or 40 people who are having significant, massive life-changing health events, doesn't impact the community all that much, or doesn't impact the ask from the community. So we've gotten to a size now where, our biggest ones are cancer and NICU babies. We've got babies who have been in the NICU for, months at a time because of some kind of birth issue. And those bills can be, millions of dollars. And, the key component here, though, is we take a very hard approach of negotiating those bills, because what we have found is that about 80% of the bills that we get from these hospitals have errors in them. And so people don't understand that when you get these bills, most of them have errors. They're either providing you with things that they said they provided you with stuff that they didn't actually provide you, or they're billing codes that aren't the right codes for what they provided you. And so we've got groups of people on the back end who are looking at these bills and helping us with, figuring them out. I'll give you one quick example. I unfortunately was in the hospital about 1.5 years ago. It ended up being a nothing burger, but I had an occupational therapist and a physical therapist come in and say, "Hey, I have to just make sure you're okay to go home." They were both with me for 10 minutes. They watched me put on my shoes, brush my teeth, and walk down the hall. And they charged me 8 15-minute visits for that one 10-minute visit. And each one of them were between $400 and $500. So, that one little visit, it cost me somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. And so when our people saw that, they're like, "Did they really see you 8 times?" And I was like, "No, they saw me once for 10 minutes. And so in that case, we can go back to the hospital and say, "Hey, this billing has an error in it." And so we can get those errors removed from your bill so that we can get those bills down pretty substantially. So this is the usual. This is the norm. This is not the exception. I mean, this happens almost every bill that we see.
Wow. And then you guys are probably doing some pre-negotiation, right? If I know I got to go in for a surgery, you guys maybe do the pre-negotiation with the doctor, say, "Hey, we're going to do this, and you're going to get your money," as opposed to, waiting, hoping you get it from the insurance company.
Yeah.
Cash in hand is on the barrelhead. There is the best way to go.
Yeah, we'll get these things funded before you have your surgery. So we had a member who tore her ACL playing pickleball, of all things, and she went to the ER. The hospital system tried to get their hospital system orthopedic surgeon to do the surgery, which they could schedule like 3 weeks later or something like that, and it was $24,000.
Jeez.
So she called us and she's like, "Hey, I have this thing scheduled in 3 weeks, and it's $24,000." And we said, "Hey, can we take a look and see who else is in town?" I live in Austin, and we have a guy in town who's an orthopedic surgeon who will take cash, who does a lot of the joint surgeries for the University of Texas athletics program. So he's really, really good. And he was willing to do it for $11,000 if he got paid at the time of surgery. So we went out to the community. We funded that $11,000. She had $11,000 when she showed up. She paid the doctor. The doctor did the surgery. Everything went great. And it was more than 50% less than what the hospital was trying to charge her, after going into the ER. So we've got these types of doctors all over the country who are willing. They're independent. They're not a part of these big hospital systems, and they're typically better than hospital system doctors from our perspective, and and a lot less expensive. We're pretty active in finding doctors, for those types of surgeries, and we can find you a really good one at a really reasonable price.
Getting into the system, you mentioned you've got to have I think 265 pounds. I think you said
260.
260, and some other aspects. Does your historical history of health insurance usage, health issues, also part of the application process, where you maybe look at it and go, you have too much going on here? Maybe is that an application?
We don't look at it. We don't look at your past history at all. When you, like I said, you can apply, you can accept that. The only thing we ask is, look, you can't jump in and have a knee surgery and then jump out. That's just not
Yeah.
that's not being a part of the community. So we truly ask you to be a part of the community before you do that type of stuff. Because we did have some problems early on where people would be like, hey, I'm going to join, I'm going to get my bill funded, and then I'm going to leave, because we don't really have any open enrollments. So it's you can join whenever you want, you can leave whenever you want, and so people were gaming that system. So we had to put some rules in place so you don't game the system. But we don't decline anybody from joining based upon their medical history.
Wow. What about height? I actually shopped some private insurance one time because they were bugging me, and I was like, okay, if you can really beat Obamacare, I don't know. Let's see what you got. And the issue was my height being 6'2".
Really?
Yeah, that was the biggest issue. My weight too, but it was the weight combined with the height. And they're like, yeah, your height's a real big issue with the insurance because taller people tend to die more. And I was like, what the hell?
That seems ridiculous. I'm 6'2", so we let people 6'2" in. The only thing that we look at as weight is if you are above 260, but you're like 6'7" and you're like CrossFit jacked or something, then we make exceptions for that. But we don't look at really height too much in terms of that. So I think that's kind of a silly rule that they have put into place, amongst many silly rules that health insurance has.
Anything to charge more money. I don't know. I guess everyone thinks there's a million guys 6 foot tall running around, but they don't. What haven't we discussed about CrowdHealth that people should know about, how they can utilize it, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's no networks, so you can go to whatever doctor you want.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And, if you're into kind of alternative medicines like integrative medicine or naturopathic medicine or things like that, you can do that with CrowdHealth as well. So that's a great part of the community. There's also, we've got, number one thing that we fund are pregnancies. The number two thing we fund are active injuries. And, we got a lot of babies with CrowdHealth and a lot of people who are out active and getting hurt, who utilize CrowdHealth to help them fund their bills. So it's a great community to be a part of. And again, if anybody wants to join us, it's joincrowdhealth.com. We'd love for you to join.
And so they can just go on there, they can apply. And how long does it usually take to get an answer back on a reply on average?
5 to 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's from start to end, it takes 5 to 10 minutes. Somebody told me the other day it took them, 3 minutes to get through it. It does not take long at all. If you've got, a big family or something like that, then, it might take a little bit longer just to enter all their data, but it's no more than 10 max, maybe 15 minutes.
That's awesome. We're coming into some interesting times in turmoil with the economy and recession, and layoffs are off the chart. These tariffs, no one knows where they're going to go. For those watching this YouTube 5 to 10 years from now, it's May of 2025. I can believe this year is almost halfway over, but maybe that's for the best. I don't know. I it seems like the older I get, the more I drag. Like I'll be in November and I'll be like, I'm still in February. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm still in February. And but you just can't win. But this may become a need for those people. I know a lot of
absolutely
government employees that were laid off. I think they're being thrown to the wolves when it comes to their health insurance. I'm not sure. I guess they get Cobras or something like most people do.
They probably get Cobra. The problem with Cobra is it's just really, really expensive. And so this is a really low cost alternative. A family of 4 with us is about $650.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And so it's way, way less expensive than, Cobra or even some of the Obamacare stuff. And we'd love for people to check it out.
Probably great for entrepreneurs. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself on the show, and we always have to do our own thing because we're our own thing. Yeah, but no, it's always tough. Like I used to have a business partner years ago who he had a lot of, I guess, inheritable sort of blood pressure, high blood pressure. Heart issues were pretty prevalent in his family. And this was in the 90s, early 2000s. He'd gone to the hospital so much that he was having trouble getting insured before Obamacare. No one would insure him. They're like, you have this hella history of, You love hospitals, basically. Not really. I'm just doing a joke, people. But yeah, it's crazy what's out there and how it works. So give people your final pitch out as we go out. Tell them how they can onboard, reach out to you, find out more information, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, if you're tired of health insurance and just the scam that is, and want to be part of a parallel system that really is trying to, burn down the existing system, we'd love for you to come and join us. Join CrowdHealth.com, like we just talked about, 5 or 10 minutes to get signed up, super easy. And then go and Google, Crowd Health reviews and go take a look at what our actual members are saying. And I think you'll see that people are loving this, and it's just way, way better than health insurance. So join CrowdHealth.com, come and join the crowd.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
And thanks, Monis, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Yeah, great for entrepreneurs.